and then we have derived the stiffness matrix, but we have not derived the consistent load vector due to body force and surface traction. So that I will do with an example. Okay, in the notes it's given, whatever notes I have shared, in that note, the derivation is given separately for body force, consistent body force vector, consistent surface traction vector, for 1D, for 2D element is given, but here explain by considering, by taking one example, we will discuss the derivation. So here we have considered a bar. We have considered a one-dimensional bar which is subjected to tension plus body force plus surface traction. That means there will be point load, surface traction, and body force. All the forces will be there. So step one is select the suitable. Step one is select the suitable field variable and element. So field variables mean we need to select the displacement degree of freedom. That means we need to select the elements, we need to select the nodes, what are the degree of freedom in the nodes. So we will consider a 1D element, so we'll have 1 degree of freedom at each node. And the problem is like this. The next step will be to discretize it. So this is the problem. Hope you can see. So here we have a bar, but the bar has geometric discontinuity. That means the cross section of this part, first top part, is different than the remaining part. So we have three parts with three different cross section, and all three parts are subjected to body force vector xb. So here xb is the body force. xb is the body force. I think it's given in per unit volume. I have to see. Network is poor again. I think I'll change the network because it is nearest residence. It's very poor. Okay, it came again. So body force vector is given xb. We have only body force in one direction, along y and z direction. We have only along x direction. Vertical direction we have considered to be x direction. Then similarly, we have surface traction xs, I think written as xs. Surface traction we have given for the whole bar. Each and every part is subjected to surface traction, and I think this is given per unit area. Then you have to multiply this surface traction by the perimeter of the element to get the value in terms of per unit length. It depends. It depends on how do you derive the surface traction matrix. Load vector, consistent load vector, it will depend on that. So we'll see that later on. I don't know what is the unit given here. So we'll see later on. Similarly, it is subjected to the point load. The bottom part we have P3, then here we have P2, then here we have P1. So there are some points look subjected to the bar. Body force, surface traction are given. First part is having 100, second part is 300, and then third part is 150 mm. Okay, this 150 mm is given. It seems, I think the point is at the middle. That will now we'll derive the consistent load vector due to body force, surface traction. Okay, point load we can directly incorporate into the global force vector. So here, as we have geometric, therefore we have to place one node here, one node here, one node here, and one node here. That means we should have minimum 4 nodes. That means we should have minimum 3 elements. Okay. They have considered 4 elements. It's X. I don't know why this is. Anyway, that is our discussion. Our discussion is how to get this consistent vector how to discretize. We've already discussed. Depending on this discontinuity, we may have more number of nodes. So here, one arbitrary element is considered, which is connected to, let's say, node 1 and 2. So here the coordinate x1 and coordinate node 2 in Cartesian coordinate system, in terms of global coordinate system. And in terms of local coordinate system, if we use local coordinate system at the center, the x coordinate is xc, y is equal to 0, and y is equal to -1, and at node 2, y is equal to +1. So this is the element. Any arbitrary element is described. So displacement here at node 1 is u1, here it will be u2. So that way, now next, the node is, we use the term delta for nodal displacement vector. We have used u suffix. So here they have used delta for nodal displacement vector. In place of u1, they have used delta 1. In place of u2, they have used delta 2. So this is nodal displacement vector of the element. They have discretized the element into four elements. So there will be 5 number of nodes. There are 5. So 5 number of nodes into degree of freedom at each node. So that will give you the total degree of freedom of the problem is 5. So the global displacement vector will be equal to delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, delta 4, delta 5. And usually we use u1, u2, u3, u4, u5. It is same. Okay. Next is here it has the element and the node. Elements and nodes are shown. Also the point load. So here they have placed another node because the point load is acting here. We have one point load acting at the midpoint of the second element, middle element. So that is why, as there is load discontinuity, so we have to place one node at the center of this element. So that is why there are four elements. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are 5 nodes. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the model. This is the model of this particular problem. So it is a line, simple line, but cross section of this different element will be different because we have geometric discontinuity. Okay. Modeling is over. Next, this table shows the connectivity of the element with the nodes, local number and global number. Okay. So these are the local number. Local number 1 and each and every element I used to use, if you remember, I and j I use as the local number. So for each and every element, for element 1, local is 1 and 2 and global is 1 and 2. For element 2, it is connected to node 2 and 3. So I is equal to 2, j is equal to 3. For element 3, it is connected to node 3 and 4. I is equal to 3, j is equal to 4. Element 4 is connected to node 4 and 5. I is equal to 4, j is equal to 5. So this is just representation. In the exam, it is not necessary to write. Just for explanation, they have written. It is not necessary. Now we have to select the integral function or step function because we have to write nodal displacement at any point in terms of nodal displacement using the step function. So here u is the displacement at any point within the element. U is the displacement at any point within the element. So that displacement can be related to the nodal displacement using step function. So u is the displacement at any point, n is the step function matrix, and delta is the element displacement vector, nodal displacement vector for an element. I used to use UE, but there they have used delta. Okay. And n is the step function matrix, which will have 2 components because here we have only 2 degrees of freedom. So this 2 degrees of freedom will be connected by these 2 step functions. And n1 in terms of Cartesian coordinate is x2 minus x by L. L is the length of the element. And in natural coordinate system, it is 1 minus xi by 2. Similarly, n2 will be equal to x minus x1 by L in Cartesian coordinate system and 1 plus xi by 2 in natural coordinate system. So we have defined the step functions. We have defined the nodal element displacement vector, global displacement vector. Next is the element properties. So what are the element properties? Here you have to connect the stress and strain we have to relate the stress and strain in terms of your nodal displacement. So that is done using the B matrix. You know, strain is related to the nodal displacement using B matrix. So the B matrix that you already know, for an 2-noded bar element, B matrix is 1 by LE, minus 1 by LE and 1 by LE. 1 by LE is taken common here. So this is your relationship between strain and nodal displacement vector. That is B into UE. Okay, where B is equal to this. Similarly, we can relate stress with strain by using the matrix. Okay, so here in place of C, they have used D. Constitutive matrix. So in case of 1D, this constitutive matrix has only one element, that is E. I have already explained. Okay, so next we have to find the expression for KE. So when you will be asked to solve a problem, it is not necessary to do the derivation. Okay, you don't do the derivation. Directly you can use the element stiffness matrix. So element stiffness matrix we have already derived. In the last class we have discussed using this concept. So K is equal to AE by L 1 minus 1 minus 1. Using this integration we have already derived it. So this is my element stiffness matrix. Next in our discussion is mainly the consistent load. So consistent load vector will be given by contribution from body force and contribution from surface traction and contribution from point load. So point load can be directly incorporated in the global force vector, but for consistent load vector for body force and surface traction, you have to derive it. So this was already given in the last expression when potential energy pi. In that expression from the work potential we got this term. So this is the contribution of the body force term in your element. So Fe is the contribution of the body force in terms of the nodal force. This will be in terms of the nodal force. So here they have used 3 integration because integration over simply used 1. It doesn't matter. So integration over volume and transpose FB dV. I used in place of XB in my expression. In place of XB, I used FB. So FB is the body force per unit volume, and here they have used XB. XB is the body force per unit volume. So the N transpose XB will give you the contribution of the body force for a small volume dV. Then you have to integrate over the volume of the element to the contribution of the body force throughout the whole element. So if you find the integration, you see integration over volume be converted to integration over length and integration over area. As area is constant throughout an element, so integration of area dA will be equal to simply A, area of the cross section of the element. Then we have integration over the length. So N transpose will be equal to N1, N2. You see N is what? You see here, N is a row vector, N1, N2. Therefore, N transpose will be a column vector. So here, N transpose will be a column vector, N1, N2. And what is the body force? So body force here in this problem is nothing but the unit weight. Though it is not mentioned in the problem, I think inside the problem it is given. The body force is equal to your unit weight. It may be given in terms of density. It may be given in terms of weight. If it is given in terms of density, then you have to multiply it by weight, because mass or density is not force. The weight is force. So if it is given, rho is given, you have to multiply it by z. Gamma will be equal to rho z. Here they have used rho for unit weight. You see here. XB is the body force in this case. In case of self weight, body force will be equal to rho, where rho is the unit weight of the material. So they have used the symbol rho for unit weight, but usually use gamma for unit weight, rho for density. So that doesn't matter whatever symbol you use. So therefore, XB is the body force per unit volume along x direction. So that will be replaced by rho. Rho or rho B, I don't know why rho B is used. Anyway, it should be rho. So XB is, we have only one component because there is no body force along y and z direction. So actually this is a vector. It includes the body force along x, y and z direction. But here in this case, case, we have body force only in x direction. So therefore, we'll have only one component, that is rho. So there is a mistake. They have used rho here and rho b here. It should be only rho. So our contribution of the body force will be integration over length n1, n2 into rho into a into dx. So rho is constant throughout the material, so it can be taken out. A is constant, it can be taken out. Then we have to do the integration for n1 and n2. Okay, so it will be rho into a into integration over the length n1 n2 dx. You have to do the integration for n1 n2 separately. But you see, if we use the same function in terms of natural coordinate system, n1 will be a function of xi. And if we use the Cartesian coordinate system, n1 will be a function of x. So in that case, if we use Cartesian shape function, you can directly do the integration. But if we use n1, n2 in terms of natural coordinate system, then you have to replace dx by in terms of dxi. So here is the relationship between xi and x. It is already given. Xi is equal to 2 by le x minus xc. xc is the value of the x at the center. Okay. So it is same expression, whatever I have given, it is a constant term. So ultimately from here, we will get dxi is equal to 2 by le dx. This expression I have already given while explaining yesterday. So dxi is equal to 2 by le dx. So dx will be equal to le by 2 dxi. So write the n1, n2 in terms of natural coordinate system and replace dx in terms of dxi. Dx will be le by 2 dxi. So here this integration is done. N1 is 1 minus I by 2. N2 is 1 plus I by 2, rho into A into Le by 2 into dxi, because dx is equal to Le by 2 dxi. Just simply do the integration. That will be your contribution of the body force at the node. So ultimately we will get, after the integration we will get, here the integration is done. You can see Fe will be equal to Ale rho by 2 1. So actually Al into rho, this term Al into rho, it is nothing but the total weight of the element, isn't it? L is the length of the element, A is the cross section of the element, so that means Al is the volume into unit weight will give you the total weight of the element. So half of the weight will be contributed to the each node. Actually Al rho by 2 into 1 is the contribution of the body force at node 1. A into Le into rho by 2 into 1 is the contribution of the body force at the another node. So they are now the nodal load for the element. Okay. So for a particular element, if you replace the value of A and L for that element and of that the contribution of the body force at the two nodes of the element. So we have converted the uniformly distributed body force in terms of nodal force. That's good. So here, noting that Ale is the volume of the element, we find that half of the self weight goes to its node. So this is the derivation of the consistent body force vector for a two-noded bar element. Okay, when it is subject force in one direction, because it is a bar element, it will have force only in one direction. Okay. So next we'll discuss the contribution of the surface traction load at the nodes. That means we will find out the consistent load vector due to surface traction or surface load. Surface traction and surface load more or less same. Network again is said bad. Anyway. So here this expression was there. It is the contribution of the surface traction. So I have already discussed in the last class this integration over surface. Why there are two integrations, it doesn't matter. So integration over surface and transpose. So XS is given surface traction per unit area. Okay. So then replace the value of the N transpose. N transpose will be a column vector N2. Now what is the value of the surface traction? Here in this expression, surface traction is per unit area. But in the problem, you have been given surface traction per unit length. So ds, this ds is equal to dl into perimeter. dl into perimeter, small amount of area, no? So dl into dp, if I use the term p for perimeter, l for length, so ds will be equal to dl into dp. Then we integrate that xs into dp, integrate over the perimeter. Then dp will be equal to perimeter, and xs into perimeter will give you the surface traction in terms of per unit length. So integration over surface is reduced to integration over length by writing the surface traction in terms of per unit length. So this T is the surface traction per unit length. T is the surface traction per unit length, this T. Okay, it is a surface traction per unit length. Therefore, when we have written the surface traction in terms of length, that means we have already integrated along the perimeter. So next will be integration over the length of the element only, because surface traction will act over the surface of the element. So surface area will be equal to length into perimeter, isn't it? So therefore, over the perimeter we have already multiplied by the intensity. Therefore, that intensity of multiplication will get in terms of surface traction per unit length. Therefore, to get the contribution of the surface traction over the whole element, we already integrated over the perimeter because cross section is constant. So then we have to do the integration over the length of the element. Why we have not done the integration over the length? Because n1, n2 are not constant. They are function of x. Therefore, you cannot integration over the length. We cannot convert this t in terms of t into l. You cannot do it because we have some other function n1 and n2. But n1 and n2 are not function of perimeter. Therefore, we have done the integration over the perimeter. n1 and n2 are function of length alone. So that is why in the integration over the length, we cannot directly multiply t by length of the element. Understood? Now we have to do the integration n1, n2. Here again they have written ts. It should be t or either t or ts, whatever. And we have replaced dx by le by 2 into dz. And we have done the integration. Simply after doing the integration, we will see that the consistent load vector due to surface traction will be equal to TLE by 2 into 1, 1. So it will be a vector. So T into LE is nothing but the total surface traction acting on the element. So what we see, half of this total surface traction will be contributed at its node. So this is my consistent load vector due to surface traction. Okay, here you can write FSE, and previous one you can write FBE. That is for body force, and this is for surface traction. Okay, so that way we can find out the consistent load vector. Now next is the point load. The point load will be directly added to the nodal force vector because point load will act only at the nodes. There should not be any point load anywhere along the element. Wherever there is a point load, you have to place a node. Therefore, point load will be always in terms of nodal load. So we don't have to do anything with that. We can directly incorporate them into the vector. Okay. Now, next is we have to write the element stiffness matrix for each and every element. Here we have written 11 stiffness matrix for element 1, for element 2, for element 3, for element 4. So here they have shown where these elements will go in the global stiffness matrix. EA1 by LE1 into 1 will go to the row and column corresponding to U1. V1. So that way you can find out the location of this elements of this element stiffness matrices in the global stiffness matrix that we have already explained. Okay, so now we have to assemble them. So after assembling, we will get K is equal to, the first term will be equal to E into A1 by LE1. That will go to 1, 1. This is U1, U2, U3, U4, U5. U1, U2, U3, U4, U5. Okay, because there are 5 nodes. So size of the K matrix will be 5 by 5. So this particular term, this term A1E by LE1 will go to the rows and column corresponding to E1 that we have already discussed in the physical class. Then this term, second term, minus EA1 by LE1 will go to the row corresponding to U1 and column corresponding to U2. So it will go here. So similarly, you can assemble all matrices to get our global stiffness matrix. So this is my global stiffness matrix. Oh, here they have shown separately. Here they have written the element global stiffness matrix for element 1 in terms of global stiffness matrix. So don't follow this. After assembling all, what we will get? This one. We will get this one. After assembling all the element stiffness matrices, we will get this global stiffness matrix. Then here you can put the values of A1, LU1, and ultimately you can find the global stiffness matrix of the system or of the problem. Okay. So stiffness matrix is assembled. Next is we have to find out the global force vector. So global force vector, we have contribution of the body force and surface traction for each and every element. Then you have to assemble them. So we have total 4 elements. So element load vector for each and every element. So this is for element 1, F11, F12. This is for element 2, F21, F22. This is for element 3, F31, F32. This is for element 4, F41, F42. Okay. Then what will be the global force vector then? Okay. So this is the contribution of the force from element 1 at node 1. This is the contribution of the force from element 1 at node 2. Then this is the contribution of the element 2. Element 2 at node 1. This is the contribution of the element 2 at node 2. So that way we have to find out the global force vector. So here it looks complicated, but it is not complicated. Okay, I'll explain. You have to find out the values of the F11. What will be the values of this? See, these values. I'll tell you here. These vectors, FE, this is for body force, this is for surface traction. You have to find out for each and every element, because A and L will be different for each and every element. So this particular equation you have to write 4 times for 4 elements. Understood? So for the first element, it will be A1, LE1, rho by 2, 1. For the second element, it will be A2, LE2 into rho by 2 into 1, 1. For the third element, A3, LE3 into rho divided by 2, 1, 1. Rho is constant, same for all the elements. So that way, we will get 4 such vectors. So all these vectors you have to assemble. That will be your body force vector. Similarly, we have to assemble the surface traction vector. So surface traction vector also will get 4 vectors for 4 elements, putting the value LE for different elements. T is constant, I think. It is in the particular problem. T is given same for all the elements. Even T also may be different. The surface traction for each and every element may be different. Here it is given same. Okay, but it is not necessary that the surface traction will be same for each and every element. The intensity may be different for different element. So in that case, it will be TE, surface traction per unit length of element E. That way you have to write. Then you have to find out this vector for each and every element separately. LE may not be same or it may be same. Then you have to assemble them for the whole system. For example, let's say we have calculated the contribution of surface traction for element 1. So if it is the surface traction factor for element 1, then the first term TLE into 1 divided by 2. First term will go to node 1. Then second term will go to the node 2. Okay. Then in the global force vector, first term will go to node 1, second will go to the node 2. Then if we calculate this value for the second element is connected to node 2 and 3. First element is connected to node 1 and 2. Second element is connected to node 2 and 3. So therefore, if this is the contribution of surface traction load for element 2, then first term T into LE of 2 divided by 2 into 1 will go to the node 2, and the second term will go to the node 3. So that way you have to find out the total loads acting at node 1, total loads acting at node 2, total loads acting at node 3, 4, 5. So again there will be contribution from body force at node 1, contribution of surface traction from node 1, contribution of body force at node 2, contribution of surface traction at node 2. So that way there will be overlap. At node 1 there will be only contribution from element 1. That can be shown from this figure here. If you see this figure. So we calculate the surface traction and body force vector for element 1. So first element will be the load at node 1. Second element in that vector will be load at node 2. Then we will get the surface traction and body force vector for element 2. The first element in the surface traction and body force vector will be at node 2. Second one will be node 3. So therefore at node 2 there will be overlapping of contribution from element 1 and element 2. Then you have to add them algebraically. Similarly, we will have the surface traction and body force vector of element 3. Then at node 3 there will be contribution from element 2 and contribution from element 3. So there will be overlapping. So when they overlap, then you have to add them algebraically. Similarly, at node 4 there will be contribution from element 3. There will be contribution from element 4. So there will be overlapping. You have to add them algebraically to get the actual load acting at node 4. So after assembling this force vector due to body force and surface traction, then directly you can incorporate the point load. At node 3 we have P1, at node 4 we have P2, and at node 5 we have P3. So you can directly add them at node 3, 4 and 5. So that will give you the consistent load vector due to surface traction, body force and point load. And that will be your global force vector. Okay. So then F will be 5 by 1 and K is 5 by 5. So del by 1. So you can solve it. Before solving, you have to apply the boundary conditions. Then you can solve. So here also they have explained how to apply the boundary condition that you already know. I'm not going to explain this. Okay. After applying the boundary condition, the remaining equation you have to solve, and you have to find out the solution for this delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, whatever remaining after application of the boundary conditions. Okay. Next, once you know the displacement, that is nodal displacement delta, you can extract the nodal displacement for each and every element. Delta 1, delta 2 will be the nodal displacement at node 1. Then you can find out the displacement at any point using this equation within that element. So once you know the displacement at any point within this element, you can also find out the strain at that point using the displacement at that point. Using U. Strain is equal to B into delta, or you can directly use here delta. You can directly use here delta. Delta is a nodal displacement. You can get the value of strain. Once you know the value of strain, then you can find out the value of stress. Stress will be equal to E into B into delta, because stress is equal to C into epsilon. I have used C in place of B. That is E into epsilon. So epsilon is equal to B into delta. In place of delta, I have used U. So it is same thing. So that way you can extract stress and strain at any point within a given element. So wherever you need, you can find out displacement, strain, stress using these relations. Now how to calculate the reactions? Reactions can be calculated using the global stiffness equations. You can directly get the reactions, but there will be some contribution of the force at node 1 due to body force and surface traction. So whatever entry will be there at the node 1, there will be force due to body force, surface traction plus reaction from the support. So this is the first equation of your global stiffness equation. So from this equation F1 you know, you can find out the reaction at the support. So that way reaction can be determined. Now we'll have one actual problem. Okay, this is in general explained. Now let us go through this problem. Here we have a thin plate of uniform thickness 20 mm. Is shown in this figure. In addition to self weight, That means self-weight means there is body force in vertical direction along the axis of the element. The plate is subjected to a point load of 400 Newton at midpoint, mid depth. So there is a point load of intensity 400 Newton at the midpoint of the element of the bar of the plate. The Young's modulus of the plate is equal to 2 into 10 to the 5 Newton per millimeter square, and the unit weight rho is given as 0.8 into 10 to the minus 4 Newton per mm square. Analyze the plate after modeling it with two elements and find the stresses in each element. Determine the support reactions also. So everything is here. In this particular problem, everything is there. It is subjected to only body force. There is no surface traction. That is the difference. So contribution from surface traction will be 0. Simply that's all. So we have modeled it. It is already asked in the problem that you have to use only two elements. You are asked to use two elements. And the area of the elements are different. Therefore, you are asked to use two elements. And at the midpoint, here, there is a point load 400 Newton. Plus, there is body force. There is no surface traction. So, this is the model. Bar element, we have used bar element, two elements. There will be three nodes. Its element to body force XB, where XB will be equal to rho. It is given. Value is node P is equal to 400 Newton. Okay, so these are the given data. So first you have to write the element stiffness equation of both the elements. Then you have to assemble them. That will give you global stiffness matrix. Then you have to assemble the body force vector, due to body force. And then point load you can directly add. So only this is the difference. We have already solved this type of problem. So in this problem is we have only body force. Remaining things we have already done. We have solved problems of this type. So how to do this body force calculation only I will show you. Here they have calculated KE of element 1, KE of element 2, then they have assembled, that is the K global stiffness matrix of the system, then consistent load due to body force. So what will be the consistent load due to body force? It is FE is equal to XB into A into LE by 2, 1, 1. Just put the values. XB is equal to rho equal to 0.8 into 10 to the power minus 4. Area, cross-sectional area is 2500 mm square. Length of the element is 250 mm divided by 2, 1, 1. So if you multiply, you will get 25. It is in Newton. So 25 Newton is the contribution of the body force for element 1 at node 1 and at node 2. So this is at node 1 and this is at node 2. So we got the body force vector for element 2. Similarly, we can find the body force vector for element 2. This is for element 1, sorry. And this is for element 2. For element 2 also, there will be contribution of the body force at node 2 and 3 because element 2 is connected to node 2 and 3. So whatever values we get after calculation, putting the value of cross section, putting the value of rho, putting the value of end, whatever value we get, these will be contributed to node 2 and 3. So this is for element 2, this is for element 1. 25 will be contributed to node 1 and 2. 20 will be contributed to node 2 and 3. Okay, so if we add them, you see here, then the global force vector will be equal to what will happen at node 1? At node 1, the consistent load vector due to body force is 25. And at node 1, there is no other forces, that is 25. At node 2, we have contribution of the element 1 at node 2, 25. This 25. Plus, we have contribution of the element 2 at node 2, 20. Plus 20. Then, also at node 2, we have a point load of 400. Simply add them. So this will be the total load at node 2. Contribution of body force plus point load node 2. Understood? So this is the load at node 1, 25. This is the load at node 2. This is also load at node 2. This is a load at node 3. I hope you have understood. So at node 2, there is overlapping of element 1 and 2. So there will be contribution of the body force from both the elements. So therefore, total loads at node 2 will be equal to 25 plus 20 plus 400. Then what will be the load at node 3? At node 3, there will be only contribution of the body force from element 2. There will not be any contribution of the body force. Element 1 is not connected to node 3. So at node 3, we have only element 2 connected. So therefore, there will be contribution from element 2. So for element 2, the body force is 20. So therefore, the load at node 2 will be 20. So this is my consistent body force vector for the whole system. Okay. Now the bar is fixed at node 1. You see, the bar is fixed at node 1. In this figure, you can see. Therefore, there will be some reactions at node 2. There will be some reactions at node 1. Therefore, usually what I do, I write here itself. So in this body force vector itself, actual load at node 1 will be equal to 25 plus R1. It should be 25 plus R1. Here it is not written, but I think it should be written. It will be 21. Okay. R1 is the reaction at node 1 because at node 1 we have support. Then the global stiffness equation will be equal to K into U is equal to F, where K is the global stiffness matrix, U is the global displacement vector. We use U1, U2, U3. Here they have used delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, but I use U1, U2, U3 is equal to your global force vector. So in place of 25, you should write 25 plus R1 because there will be reaction at node 1. And you have to apply the boundary condition. So what is the boundary conditions? The displacement at node 1 is 0 because at node 1 it is fixed. So therefore, if we use the method of elimination, the first row and first column will be removed because we know the value of U1 or delta 1. So row and column corresponding to delta 1 must be removed. So after the application of the boundary condition, this is your stiffness equation, global stiffness equation. Solve it for delta 2 and delta 3. R1 is removed. Okay, then you get the solution of the displacement. Next, if you are asked to find out the reaction, you can use the first equation. The first equation will be equal to 2 into 10 to the power 5 common 10 into delta 1 minus 10 into delta 2 plus 0 into delta 3 will be equal to 25 plus R1. And 0 into delta 3 will be 0. It will be nothing but 2 into 10 to the power 5 into minus 10 into delta 2 will be equal to 25 plus R1. So that equation will give you the value of R1 or reaction. Got it? So that way we got the solution. Next, you are also asked to find out the value of stresses in element. Okay, so here is calculated. This is delta 2 and this is delta 3. Delta 1 is equal to 0. So this is delta 3. So we got delta 3 and delta 2. Delta 1 is equal to 0. This is my solution. Now how to find out the stress and strain? Here you see the displacement is constant. Displacement varies linearly because your step functions are linear. So variation of displacement is linear. So when the variation of displacement is linear, then what will be the strain? B is a constant matrix. For to know that bar element B is a constant matrix, it is minus 1 by L and 1 by L. We have two terms in the B matrix. Therefore, we don't need the integration here directly, or you don't need the value of xi at any point. Throughout the element, it will be constant, same. So for element 1, sigma 1 will be equal to E into B into delta of element 1. So delta of element 1 means the nodal displacement vector of element 1. That will be delta 1 and delta 2 here. Delta 1 and delta 2. So sigma 1 is equal to E into B into delta of that element. That will give you this value, and this is constant in element 1. Similarly, sigma 2 will be equal to E into B into delta of element 2. Delta of element 2 will be equal to delta 2 and delta 3. So after multiplication, you will get this is the stress in the element 2. Okay. So that way you can find out the stresses. You can even find out the strain. B into delta will give you strain. Then you are asked to find out the reaction. So reaction, I already told you how to find out the reaction. Use that equation. They have written that equation and they have found the reaction. Okay, so that way simply you can find out the reaction. So the problem is solved. Okay, now we'll solve another problem. In this problem, yeah, let us consider a tapering element. Okay, so with this your bar element will be over. Next you can go to after bar you can go to beam. Consistent load vector due to UDL acting on a beam. We'll discuss that. So let us solve this problem. In this problem, what is given? Assemble the element properties. Element properties means you have to assemble the element stiffness matrix, element stiffness equation for a bar with uniformly varying area subjected to self weight only, as shown in the figure below. Neglect the possibility of buckling. Treat it as a single element. So to treat the whole bar as a single element. But thing is, here the cross section throughout the element is not constant. It is not constant. So how to handle this? There are different ways of handling. In one way, what you can do is, here it is not done, but you can do that. Here the cross section is, let's say, B1 into 1. Thickness is, let's say, T. So A1 will be equal to B1 into T. And here cross section will be equal to B2 to T. Okay. Then you can find an average area. Average area will be equal to B1 into T plus B2 into T divided by 2. That will be the average area. Then you can have a bar with thickness T and an average width of B1 plus B2 by 2. Then you can consider that cross section to be uniform throughout. So you can assume a bar of uniform thickness whose average thickness will be equal to B1 plus B2 by 2. That is one possibility of handling this type of problem. But the error involved will be more if the length of the bar is more. But if the length is less, in that case the error involved will be less. Okay, so for a small length bar, you can use the average cross section, that is A1 plus A2 by 2, and that is the cross section. You can assume that is the cross section throughout the length of the element. That is one possibility. But here, that another possibility, what they have used here is, we can consider the variation of area. Here area is B1, T1, here area is B2, T2. Or T is constant throughout, so B is varying. Then the variation of B can be handled using the shape function variation of the displacement. Understood? So here in a two-noded bar element, we know the shape function varies linearly. 1 at node 1, 0 at node 2. That is the variation of N1. Similarly for N2, 1 at node 2 and 0 at node 1. That is the variation of shape function N2. So we see that the shape functions of the element varies linearly. At the same time, the cross section is also varying linearly. Therefore, the same shape functions can be used to find out the area at any point within the element. This is also one kind of isoparametric formulation. I told you in the last class, we can use isoparametric formulation to relate the Cartesian coordinate to natural coordinate. So here the same concept, isoparametric concept, will use to relate the variation of this area using the shape function. So how they will be used, I'll show here. So here the B matrix is same, we know. What is written here? B is equal to this. This strain, I think. Strain. Epsilon x is equal to B into delta. This derivation is not needed always, that you already know. Now the area which varies linearly. area which varies linearly can also be represented in natural coordinate system as area at any point A is equal to N into A. That means A will be equal to N1 into A1 plus N2 in A2. I told you already. So the variation of area can be handled using the same shape function that is used for displacement. Because the shape function here we have used is linear. Displacement is varying linearly. Area is also varying linearly. Therefore, shape function, the same shape function used for displacement can be used to handle the variation of area. I told you the shape function are nothing but the interpolation function. They interpolate the variation of a function. So here, this shape function are used as an interpolation function, variation of the cross section of the bar. So here you see that when we use xi is equal to -1. So where xi is equal to -1? Xi is equal to -1 at node 1. So if I put xi is equal to -1 in the expression of A, we'll get A is equal to A1. And again, when xi is equal to +1, we get A is equal to A2. Therefore, A at any point within the element, we can find using this expression, putting the corresponding value of xi. So A varies, it means A varies with x because plus x by natural coordinate xi. So that way, we can use the concept of isoparametric to formulate the variation of area along the bar. Okay, as it is linearly varying. If it is not linear oblique type, then you cannot use. Then you have to assume some approximation to handle the variation of the area. Here it is given that area is very linear. We know displacement also varies linearly for a two-noded bar element. Therefore, same shape function can be used to handle the variation of the area. Okay. So A at A point will be given by this expression. N1 into E. Okay. In symbolically, it can be written like this: A is equal to N into A. Now, what is the elliptic matrix? Here, as area is not constant, so we cannot directly use the element stiffness matrix. We have that element. That question was when area was constant. But in our case, now area is variable. It varies with time. That means it varies along the length of the element. Therefore, you have to derive it. You have to derive it from the original equation. What is the original equation of K? K of an element is equal to integration over volume V transpose dV into dV. That is the equation, general equation of K we derived yesterday. Therefore, now A is not constant, but equation A is A. We don't need any integration over A, but A simply we can write like this. Here the only thing is A is not constant. It is a function of N. It is a function of N means it is a function of xi. We have to consider A in the integration. You cannot take it out. This A you cannot take it out of the integration. That is the thing. Okay. A is function of xi. So the integration over area we can remove. So ultimately we will have integration over area length. So integration over area will be equal to A, but A is function of xi. A is function. A varies along the length of the element. So you cannot take out A from inside the integration. That is the difference. Okay. So in place of this A in this equation, we will write A is equal to N into A. We will use this expression. We will replace A by this expression. Okay. So K is equal to integration over volume has changed, integration over length. 0 to L means when we use natural coordinate, this integration will be -1 to +1 because I values over the length varies from -1 to +1. B transpose C into B. I use C in place of D. It is same. Into A. Then dx will be equal to LE by 2 d xi. Now what is A? A will replace by the equation here. A will replace by this equation here. A will be equal to 1 minus xi by 2, 1 plus xi by 2 into A1, A2. So it is replaced by this. Okay. Then we have to do this multiplication. Do all this multiplication. And then you can do the integration. After doing the multiplication, you have to do the integration. So here it is solved like this. This is a constant term. So you only in this portion, they have already integrated from -1 to +1 after integration. Then these values are placed, then we will get this. So your stiffness matrix become E into A1 plus A2 into LE 1 minus 1 minus 1 1. Then what is A1 plus A2 by 2? It is nothing but the average area. Ultimately, you got the average area, isn't it? So therefore, initially you could have considered n cross section, and the cross section will be equal to A1 plus A2 by 2. That is possible. So A dash is average area. Okay, so derivation is shown here. Next is consistent load due to body force. Here cross section is not constant, so in the expression, in the derivation of body force term, you cannot take area out. So now the values will be slightly different. Okay, so this is a general expression for consistent body force. So in this expression, we have to write dV as A into dx. A into dx, but A you cannot take out of the integration because A is a function of xi, and dx will be equal to LE by 2 d xi. Then put the value of A from this equal to n1, n2, a1, into a1 plus n2, that can be written like this. So replace the value of A here and write the value of n1 transpose column vector, and n rotor, then do the multiplication. After doing the multiplication, you will get this matrix and do the integration element wise of this matrix. Okay, after doing the integration, we will get different terms, and then we will get matrix 2 by 2 matrix, multiply it by A1, A2, then ultimately we got our consistent body force vector like this. So it is rho into L by 6, 2 into A1 plus A2, A1 plus 2 into A2. Okay, so putting the values of A1 and A2, we will get a vector, column vector. That will give the contribution of this body force at one node 1 and 2. Okay, so the element equation is equal to E into A bar by LE, where A bar is equal to A1 plus A2 by 2, 1 minus 1 minus 1, 1, E1, U2 is equal to rho L by 6, where rho is a 2A1 plus A2 plus 2A2. So the expression. So this is done. Is here, you can directly, if you remember this equation for consistent body force vector, you can directly use this formula to solve this type of problem. So here it is the same, only thing is you are given the values and you are asked to solve the problem. Okay, nothing else. You have been given the value of B1, you have been given the value of B2, you have been given point load, you have been given body force, thickness is given. So everything put in these equations, you will get body force vector, everything is to you. So you can solve it. Okay. Is equal to E by LE, put the value length, put the values of A bar, then F is equal to rho into LE by 6, 2A1 plus A2, A1 plus 2A2. Just put these values and get the equation. Once you get the equation, then you solve it after applying boundary conditions. It is fixed at node 1, so delta 1 or U1 will equal to 0. So we'll have only 1 and 3 in the equation, that is delta 2. So find a value. So solution is done. So temperature stresses I will remove. Do not consider temperature stresses. There is no time.
Ma'am.
That's very simple. Yes?
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this one that you just now, you won't be asking it in the exam.
Pardon?
Ma'am, the one that you told that the tapered bar, right? The stresses in the tapered bar. So that we have to discard it from the exam point of view, right? Or we have to study, right, ma'am? I just heard something different, I think, ma'am.
Tapered, but you have understood what?
Yeah, I understood it, but I thought that you were saying that we had to discard it from the examination point of view like that. So I just thought.
I told this one, temperature stresses.
Acha.
Stresses is not included, not tapered bar.
अच्छा. ठीक है मैम, ठीक है मैम, ठीक है.
So temperature stress very simple, but I will not include. Okay, procedure is same. So I tell you that this part I will not include. Understood?
Ji.
Not tapered one.
Ji.
Okay. Two-dimensional we will not discuss. Then we will go to truss. Truss we have already discussed. There is nothing new in the truss. Truss we have discussed. Because in truss the load will be always nodal load. There is no load along the length of the truss. So there is no point of discussing again. Truss is modeled as a bar element. So for the bar, we already know the element stiffness equation. So therefore, we will not discuss again. Next will be beam. Search for the beam. Where it is? Which chapter we have beam? Let me see. So if you have this Bhabikati book, no, download it. It is download finite element analysis SS Bhabikati. You can freely download. So I am solving all the problems from that book, and you can also go through those problems. So your problems will be only from that book only. Okay. So whatever problem of bars, then truss, then frame, beam will be there. Whatever derivation, each and every derivation I have done is given here. Only thing is the symbol they have used is not same as I have used. That is the difference. Otherwise everything is same because FEM procedure is same, so everything will be same. After bar, plane stress and plane strain I will omit. I have already discussed the shape function is sufficient for 2D. Now I will discuss little bit on isoparametric formulation. We will not solve any problem, simply I will discuss because it is important. Just I will discuss what is isoparametric concept. Okay, just that. Let me see where it is. 221. Plane strain I have already discussed the derivation of the shape function for cosine strain triangle. So K matrix I will not derive. It will take lots of time. Isoparametric formulation. So let us discuss little bit on this isoparametric formulation. See here, let us consider a triangular element. So this is my actual element. In the global system, this is my actual element. Here, this is my actual element. But here, this is the element which will be mapped in the natural coordinate system. Okay, so there must be some definite relationship between this element and this element because this element represents exactly this element. So there should be some relationship between this natural coordinate and Cartesian coordinate. So this relationship is straightforward in case of bar element. We have already derived the relationship between xi and x in case of bar element. Okay. Now how to derive this relationship for 2D element, because 2D element will have two coordinate axes xi, eta. In case of 3D, we will have three coordinate axes xi, eta, and gamma are usually used. So the relationship is not so straightforward. So to have this relationship, one concept is used, which is called a parametric concept. It may be isoparametric, it may be subparametric, it may be superparametric, but usually we'll use the isoparametric concept. So what is this isoparametric concept? Here's just given example. This is the actual element and this is the element in the natural coordinate system. This is the actual element and this is the element in the natural coordinate system. Okay, but there should be definite relationship between them. So how to define them? So for that we use a coordinate transformation. So how is the coordinate transformation? As per the isoparametric concept, the coordinate at any point within an element, can be written in terms of the nodal coordinates using the shape functions. Like displacement at any point is a function of the node displacement, isn't it? U is equal to N1 U1 plus N2 U2 plus N3 U3. V is equal to N1 V1 plus N2 V2 plus N3 V3. The same concept can be used to find out the coordinates of any point within an element using the same shape functions which are used for displacement. If we use the same shape function which are used for displacement to find the coordinate of any point within an element in terms of the nodal coordinates, that concept is called as parametric concept. Okay, it is called as parametric concept. If we use the same number of shape functions used to model the displacement, then it will be called as isoparametric concept. If we use some less number of shape functions to get the coordinates as compared displacement, then it will be called as subparametric concept, sub. And if we use some more number of shape functions, that means if we use some more number of nodes to describe or to find the variation of coordinates within an element, in terms of node, mostly in most of the finite which are used to describe the coordinate within an element in terms of nodal coordinates are the same as the number of shape function used for displacement variation. Okay. Therefore, let's say we have a element where it has n number of nodes. We have an n noded element in 3D. Then x will be given as n1 x1 plus n2 x2 plus n3 x3 up to plus n1 x1. At any point, x, y, z is the coordinate of any point within the element. Okay, and n1, n2, n3 are the shape function of that particular point. Okay, so that means this n1 will give you the contribution of x1 at that particular point. N2 will give you the contribution of x2 at particular point. N will give you the contribution of xn at particular point. If you have any point P within the element whose coordinate is x, y, z, then x will be equal to n1 x1 plus n2 x2 plus dot 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 n xn, where n1, n2, n3, n are the shape function of node 1, 2, 3 and their values at that particular point. To find out n1, n2, n3, you have to put the values of xi, eta at that particular point. Okay, so this n1, n2, n3, nn, they will be function of xi. So coordinate in terms of xi, eta, gamma, you can find out the values of n1, n2, n3 at a given point. Then you can find out the corresponding values of x, y, z. Okay, so this concept is called isoparametric concept. Similarly, you can write for y. Y is equal to n1, y1 plus n2, y2 plus nn, yn. Z will be equal to n1, z1 plus n2, z2 plus nn, zn. So ultimately, x will be equal to x, y, z is equal to a shape function matrix. It will be n1, n2, nn, like that. Then into xe. Xe will be your nodal coordinates, which will include x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3 up to yn, z1, z2, z3 up to zn. Okay. Same expression if you write for a 4-nodal rectangular element, what will you get? See, I think it is written here. Let's see. Yeah. Let us try to find out. Here we have a point P within the element, right? And the coordinate of point P in natural coordinate system is known. Okay, because our all derivation will be in terms of natural coordinate. Coordinate of the point P in natural coordinate, let's say it is known. It may be, let's say, like 0.25 value of xi, and 0.8 is the value of eta. And you see one thing. The value of xi and eta always varies from -1 to +1. It cannot have a value more than 1 and less than -1. That you should always remember. Xi, eta are the natural coordinate. Their values always varies from -1 to 1. Okay. So the same point, actual element is this one. This is the same point in the actual element. This is the point P in the natural coordinate system. So P will have the coordinate xi, eta, and in the actual element P will have some coordinate x and y. So we need to find out the value of x and y if I know the value of xi, eta using the isoparametric concept. Okay. For that, we should know the shape function of a 4-noded rectangular element. It is a 4-noded rectangular element. 4 nodes. So we should know the shape function n1, n2, n3, n4 for a 4-noded rectangular element. So what are the 4-noded rectangular elements? What are the shape functions? n1 is equal to 1 minus xi, 1 minus eta divided by 4. I told you the tricks how to remember. The node 1 coordinate is -1, -1. So shape function 1 will be equal to 1 minus xi, 1 minus eta divided by 4. Okay. Then node 2 has coordinate -1, 1. Xi, 1 minus eta divided by 4. Then node 3 has coordinate 1, 1. Therefore, n3 will be equal to 1 plus xi, 1 plus eta divided by 4. Node 4 has coordinate 1 minus 1. So n4 will be equal to 1 minus xi, 1 plus eta divided by 4. So that way you can easily remember if you remember the coordinates. And coordinates you can easily remember by drawing the element. Just draw the element. This is the xi coordinate, this is eta coordinate, and you start the node number from here. This is node 1, node 2, node 3, node 4. Then you can show the coordinates. Once you remember the coordinates, then n1 will be equal to 1 minus xi into 1 minus eta divided by 4. n2 will be equal to 1 plus xi into 1 minus eta divided by 4. n3 will be equal to 1 plus xi, 1 plus eta divided by 4. n4 will be equal to 1 minus xi, 1 plus eta divided by 4. It's very, very easy to remember. Okay. So we know the shape functions. And P is a point which has coordinates xi and eta. Therefore, xi, eta is known. And in the global coordinate system, the coordinates, nodal coordinates are x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, x4, y4. These are known to us. Okay. Then the coordinate of the point P in the Cartesian coordinate will be equal to x is equal to n1 x1 plus n2 x2 plus n3 x3 plus n4 x4. The value of n1, n2, n3, n4 you can calculate if you know the value of xi and eta for the point. So once you know n1, n2, n3, n4, then you can find out x and y of that particular point. So that way, using isoparametric concept, we can find we can relate the Cartesian coordinate with the natural coordinate. Okay. So here these basic concepts are given. This much is sufficient for you. You don't need more than that. These are not needed. So these are sub-parametric, super-parametric, I have already told you. In isoparametric, same nodes will be used for coordinate mapping. In super-parametric, some more nodes will be used for coordinate mapping. And in sub-parametric, some less nodes will be used for coordinate mapping. Okay. So this is sufficient, and stiffness matrix assembly will not discuss in your course. So next topic will be your what is next? Analysis of beam and rigid frame. That is your chapter 14 of this book by S.S. Babikati. You try to download it. I have already downloaded. You can download this book, or I can share this book. I have this soft copy of this book. If I think in ERP it is not possible. So here, if it is possible, I will share this file, or I will share in the Google Drive. Okay, this book if you cannot download. So next class, I think it's already 12:49, 12:50. I had class in the morning also with third year, so I'm very tired. So in the next class, we'll discuss the analysis of beam and frame. I think in one class we'll be able to complete the syllabus. Okay. So tomorrow we'll be able to complete our syllabus. Okay.
Ma'am,
so I'll wind up. Is it okay?
Ma'am, same time.
Same time. Tomorrow I'll complete. Anyhow, I'll complete. Yeah, same time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We are left with only beam and frame. Okay. So that's we'll solve one problem for beam and frame, and you go through some problems of this book. Okay. So that type of problem, those type of problems will be there in the exam. Right? So I'll end the meeting.